B1 Battle Droids were designed and manufactured by Bactoid Combat Automata and Bactoid Armor Workshop. They became the standard battle droid unit for the Trade Federation and the Confederacy of Independent Systems, or the CIS. The Trade Federation used them for the invasion of Naboo. After this, they were given to the Separatists, who upgraded them and used them in the Clone Wars. Even after the Empire was created, they still saw limited use on Separatist holdouts and were sold on the black market. Hello and welcome to a new series for me. As you may be able to see from my account history, I struggled with consistent uploads. I'm not going to go into why, but since Star Wars is my special interest, I hope this series will motivate me to keep this series going and upload more. So this series will be focused on comparing different characters of the Star Wars universe. If you've ever played Top Trumps, then the format will be very familiar for you. For those that haven't, I'll be looking at 5 categories and giving a score out of 5 for each. At the end I will give an average score, and as this series goes on I will place each character in a chart to see who is the strongest overall. It's also important to remember that with the sequel trilogy, Disney shut down Star Wars Legends and retconned a lot of info to create a new canon. Because of this I will be using information from the canon section of Wikipedia, but I may also do a Legends version in the future for each Star Wars video I do. So without further ado, let's look at the worst characters in Star Wars. B1s are very weak both physically and otherwise. Their design is very thin and flimsy, allowing them to be destroyed extremely quickly. They can even break if they just fall down a very large hole, which might sound pedantic until you realise that there are some droids in the Star Wars universe that can survive these falls. The limbs aren't very well protected with an overexposed neck stalk. However, physical strength isn't their only downfall. Early units, such as the one used on Naboo, relied on a droid control ship. At first glance, this doesn't seem like much of an issue. The control ship was heavily defended by frigates and droid starfighters, so no one would really attack. It's only when child Anakin got a lucky shot did the real weakness affect the army. When the connection was interrupted, the droids completely shut down. The Separatists later upgraded this aspect by giving them independent programming. This caused an issue that I'll cover in the intelligence section, but this was obviously a massive improvement. Command ships were used to cut costs in programming and processing, but arguably the independent programming, while increasing the cost per unit, was a cheaper alternative than building an expensive ship, along with the ships needed for its defense, that would be able to handle the processing power needed to command all the droids. The main strength of the B1 units is in their numbers, with the cost of an individual unit being incredibly cheap when compared to other units. This allows the droids to be mass produced at an alarming rate. As a result, you can overwhelm your opponent with sheer numbers while covering the weakness of the B1 with different units. However, when we consider the individual strength of a single unit, they are sorely lacking. Therefore, I'm giving the B1 unit a strength of 2. B1 battle units are light and nimble, especially compared to later B2 units. It may seem like a silly thing to point out, but the B1 units are capable of running. This allows them to quickly redeploy on the battlefield or rush the enemy and catch them by surprise. The only issue is that this never really occurs to them, at least in the movies and in the 2008 Clone Wars series it doesn't. They don't use their speed to their advantage, instead they will just simply walk around until they find something to shoot. A lot of the time they stand in an open field while shooting at their opponents who were in cover. So because of their unwillingness to move faster than a snail, the B1s get a speed rating of 2. This will be a very quick category. B1 units aren't capable of much other than basic human movement, but even this is limited. We never see them jumping, rolling, sliding, basically anything that would give them an advantage or that would make them less of a target. Unfortunately, I can't hand out 0, so these guys are only getting a 1. Most B1s carry an E5 blaster rifle. The rifle was reverse engineered from a Blastech design, the company behind the standard issue pistols of the Clones, Imperial Forces and the First Order, as well as Han Solo's blaster and a variant of the Rebels' A280 assault blaster. However, the E5 was specifically designed for droid use. They overheated quickly and were relatively fragile. It was also extremely powerful thanks to the larger gas chamber, but despite this, the weapons were still inferior to the Republic's DC-15A and DC-15S, which were both capable of destroying a droid in a matter of seconds. Their metal bodies were also very cheap and not very resistant to blasters or lightsabers. They could also be taken out by destroying the head, as this was where the processing unit was, and as I mentioned above, they were easy to hit due to their thin headstalks. They could also be destroyed by hitting the power capacitors on their back, which were an easy target for Republic snipers. Because of the inferior technology to other battle droids, they get a defense rating of 2. I feel like this is the category that brings the rest of the scores down. B1s infamously have terrible electronic components, mainly their processing units and numerous glitches. These glitches often resulted in the B1s developing personalities, and because of this they were more likely to question orders or talk back to higher ups. If you've ever seen the 2008 version of the Clone Wars, you'll know just how annoying these personalities could be, both to the audience and to the characters. But let's get back to their programming. B1s could be specialised for multiple purposes. These came in the form of rocket droids, grapple droids, rocket launcher droids, worker droids, and firefighter droids. The rocket droid and the rocket launcher droid had two different purposes. Rocket droids were used in space to hunt down escape pods, while rocket launcher droids were just simple battle droids that used rocket launchers. Despite their versatility, their intelligence was still limited. A B1 manning a laser cannon on a Magnificent class frigate missed every shot at fleeing Republic escape pods. When his commanding officer asked him what happened, he blamed his programming.
What a terrible shot. Ah well, it's my programming.
I find this rather funny. On the one hand, the droid had enough intelligence to point out the flaw in his programming, but not enough to counter it. But before I give the point, I just want to say that I don't blame the droids for their intelligence. Their incompetence is down to the manufacturers and developers of the droids. They had to sacrifice quality for cost effectiveness, and as a result, the components were of really bad quality. I think this comes down to a debate between the Republic-style army and the Separatist-style army. If you want an effective army that can use advanced tactics, you go with humans. The downside is that clones, even with their breeding and training, are more likely to question orders and defect. Droids don't have this problem. You can give them the bare minimum of programming and you have a cheap army that you can mass produce. However, you will have to limit the intelligence to stop them from thinking and acting like people, so they can be less specialised. Special forces or heavier units would be more expensive, whereas armies made up of humans or organics only need extra training for certain roles. However, the Separatists managed to combine each weakness of these and took none of the strengths. They created soldiers just smart enough to be self-aware but not smart enough to be good fighters. Their cost doesn't even justify their benefits in my opinion. I would much rather spend a few hundred more credits per unit to have a reliable infantry. I also found an interesting fact during my research about why these droids look like humans. As I'm sure many of you are thinking, why would they design a robot that looks like a human when any other design would be far better? For example, the B2s don't really look like humans, at least from the chest up. Well, it's because these B1 units could operate machinery and vehicles that the Separatists had already designed for humans, so it was a cheaper alternative than redesigning the entire technology of the army. As a result, the B1s were a cheap but ineffective solution to their problems. I would probably have upped the scores in each category if they were simple but well-made units. However, their limited intelligence just drops them down significantly. So after all that, they get an intelligence rating of 1. After all that's been said, this brings us to an average of 1.6. Unsurprisingly, these droids debut at the bottom of the list, or the top depending on your perspective. How long will they stay there? Tune in next time to find out.